Hi, my name is John.
And my name is Lloyd.
And we're the hosts of The Pint,
a pop culture podcast.
Lloyd, if you had to tell any of the people out there that might be listening to The Pint for the first time about anything unsavory or disconcerting we might do on the show, what would you warn them about?
Well, sometimes we drop spoilers, and sometimes we swear like motherfucking sailors.
Fuck yeah, we do. You heard it from him. You've been warned.
Listen in.
Sutter Kane.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Pint, a pop culture podcast. My name is John.
My name is Eric, your pal Hot Coffee Lawsuit.
And we are here tonight to talk about a film that I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet, because I'm going to get into something first. Uh-oh. So as I've said on many episodes, every episode of The Pint, a pop culture podcast, is a co-production between The Pint, myself, and The Manster, and our Pint Insiders. Those are the folks that go to Patreon/The Pint. Pay $2.50 a month, get all kinds of cool show shaping ability and extra episodes, all that stuff. What we're doing is I asked for a lot of movies to review from the Pint Insiders, and I'll put those episodes out either on the Pint Insider feed or the main feed and call them Insider Choices. A couple months ago, I did an episode for Insider Amanda that she didn't know about, and it was for the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, because I know she's a big fan of that. So I said to myself, you know what, that's a good idea too. I'm friends with a lot of these folks. I feel like I've gotten to know them, such as Eric here. And, you know, if someone doesn't give me a movie necessarily, or even if they do, maybe I could throw one at them. Like, you know, I know you like this, so I'm going to do it for you. So that's where we get into our buddy Seanny Mac, Sean McLaughlin from HorrorNewsNetwork.net and, you know, CT Cult Classics, CT Horror Fest. Well, Sean picked a movie. We are going to do that. But I know that Sean loves the movie In the Mouth of Madness. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to do an insider dedication just for Sean. This is going to be a surprise. Like he doesn't know we're doing this. So I'm hoping that will make him happy. And he'll go, hey, look at that. Someone did this. So John Carpenter, In the Mouth of Madness. A couple weeks ago at this point, week and a half ago, Connecticut Cult Classics, Larry paired this up with The Fog. Eric, you were there, but you only stayed for this one. Now, does that, let me ask you what that means. Does that mean that you're too old to stay up that late?
Yeah. No, I got like some family stuff, you know, so it's like you pick and choose kind of deal. So I was like, should I go late and do The Fog in the middle or whatever? Because I could only stay for one. And to be honest with you, I mean, I'm embarrassed, but I'd never seen In the Mouth of Madness. Like, I have these like embarrassing gaps in like my horror, really all my movies and stuff. So why I've seen John Carpenter's Vampires 15 times and never In the Mouth of I have no idea. Yeah. So this Connecticut Cult Classics, the last one, was the first time I've ever seen this before.
Okay. All right. Well, that's not as embarrassing as me never seeing Caddyshack, by the way.
That's cancel worthy. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you the one last year that suggested that I should have done Caddyshack like around the time of the GHO or whatever they're calling it?
Yeah. It was the Masters. I figured I was trying to help you out, a little incentive, a little like deadline-ish kind of whatever. You blew right through it. You're like, whatever. But
comedies are hard, man. It becomes a quote fest, you know?
Yeah. You remember when he said this or whatever? Yeah. I can imagine. But you did me solid. You did Real Genius for me, so I appreciate it.
That's right. Real Genius is kind of a comedy, but also kind of a maybe like a military thriller lighthearted. Right. So yeah, that was fun to do.
It's not like Caddyshack's more like one zany like set piece after another. There's something going on in Real Genius. There's stuff to talk about, I think. So it was a good episode. I liked it, so I appreciate it.
The movie my dad calls the popcorn movie.
It's funny.
All right, so let's get into this one then. Let's see. In the Mouth of Madness came out on February 3rd, 1995. Now, a lot of places online say this is a 1994 movie because it came out, I think, in Italy or in some festival in Italy.
Yeah, some festival, yeah.
In like October or November of 94. But this came out in the States and pretty much everywhere else 95. But if you look it up online, most places say 94. So
now, did they dump it? Like, is this like a February dump, like a 95, maybe?
Well,
like, did it not test well, or whatever happens with these things?
I couldn't read anything about that, but I mean, let's be honest. At this point, John Carpenter isn't John Carpenter anymore. He's definitely getting towards the end of his run of good movies.
Yeah.
And another thing that was weird was this came out in February of 95, and in April, Village of the Damned came out. He had 2 movies in a 2-month period.
That quick. I didn't realize. Wow. Okay.
And I've never seen that one, the remake, but I saw this in the movie theaters. I saw this in the movie theaters way back when. So directed by John Carpenter, who we all know from John Carpenter's The Thing, Halloween, all that good stuff, horror master. And again, this might be like really towards the end of films that people consider, in his good period. As you mentioned, Vampires is after this. That's even not that bad, but then you get into like shit like Ghosts of Mars.
Right.
Right. A year after this one. Yeah. I never saw The Ward, but we did an episode on, I think, the Pint Insider Escape from LA was after this. And that's no bueno.
Yeah. The fact that he like loops this into his like, what is it? The End of the World trilogy, whatever he calls the
Apocalypse
trilogy. That kind of ropes it back into like his good run. The fact it like has its hook into keeping it kind of part of that run kind of deal. Yeah, but you're right. That's kind of the end of it.
If you're not familiar, the Apocalypse trilogy is The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and this film here. Because they all deal essentially with end of the world type stuff. Obviously, The Thing is this outer space thing that's taking over everything. Prince of Darkness is liquid Satan. I mean, really, right?
And
that's
math.
it.
And math.
And math. Yeah.
Evil math.
And this is just essentially madness. Written by Michael DeLuca. He did the screenplay for what we'll be doing very soon on the videos with Stu and Larry. Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. And he co-wrote the story of the much maligned, but as I gave it a treasure a couple years ago, Judge Dredd film from 1995 as well. So Michael DeLuca has done some stuff. He was also mostly known less as a writer, but more as a producer. He produced Ghost Rider. He produced Captain Phillips. I'm the Captain Now. He produced Moneyball. Michael DeLuca is kind of a Hollywood guy.
Yeah, he was Bob Che, I guess, took him under his wing. So he was kind of a mentor for him. And he was president and CEO of New Line at 27 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he basically like greenlit his own movie because he'd written this years before. I think when he was like in his early 20s or something crazy. And basically he's been like either a CEO or running some kind of, he was MGM, he was Sony. He's been a big shot like everywhere. I forget where he is now. I don't know if it's MGM or I forget, but yeah, like you said, and he's been nominated as a producer, like you said, Moneyball, Academy Award kind of nominee for producing. So this guy's like a big deal.
And he wrote Judge Dredd. So
and
let's not forget that.
And cherry on top.
This was filmed all over Canada, essentially. Toronto, King City, Unionville, all in Ontario, and it was filmed in August to October of 1993. Usually movies have about a year, after they're filmed. So it does make me think that maybe this should have been out earlier in 94 and maybe got dumped. Who knows? All right, let's get into the cast.
Bring me everyone. What do you mean everyone?
Everyone! Now, you've mentioned it to me, and it's true, Eric. You've kind of become our go-to guy for a certain actor. What actor is that?
That's Sam Neill. The great Sam Neill.
Jurassic Park, right? Sure. You showed up for that.
Yeah.
Sam Neill's the lead in this film. He is John Trent, who is essentially, he's kind of like a corporate, what would you say? What would you say he is?
He's like an insurance claim investigator, I guess would be the thing on his desk, the plaque on his desk.
So he goes in and there's a scene early in the movie where he basically figures out a guy had burned down his own factory and also that he was cheating on his wife. And so he basically saves the day. And
I mean, when you're that sweaty, you're guilty of something. I mean, that one was it. Yeah. I know his buddy called him like the best ever, but I mean, the guy's just dripping and, just keeps looking at the clock or whatever. So
nervously smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Sam Neill, known from, as we said, Jurassic Park. Also, we did Event Horizon and Hunt for Red October. And we also mentioned very recently battling cancer. Hope everything's good on that end. If there's a drinking game, I made up for this movie, 2 things. Every time Sam Neill takes a cigarette out and puts it in his mouth, all right, you're going to get drunk just on that alone. And every time he says the character name Styles, you'll die from alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
He says Styles 807 times in this movie. I noticed that very much. Julie Carmen played Linda Styles. She is one of two things. She's either a kind of like a corporate book editor or imaginary, who knows. She was from Fright Night Part 2, and she did a lot of TV. ER, Falcon Crest, which I mentioned on one of the last podcasts, was Larry's favorite show ever. Jürgen Prochnow plays Sutter Kane. Do you read Sutter Kane? You probably know him from Das Boot, and also Judge Dredd. He was in Judge Dredd as well. Yeah. David Warner plays Dr. Wren. Star Trek 5 and 6, he played two different characters. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. He is like the mad scientist that comes up with the ooze.
Don't forget Beastmaster 3.
Oh, I've never seen Beastmaster 3. I've never seen it. I haven't gone past Beastmaster 1.
Well, it's worth it. It's worth a look. It's good.
All right. Maybe we'll do that one at some point. We are doing, by the way, just for the listeners out there, we will be doing Beastmaster very soon. That's on the docket. Nice. John Glover plays Saperstein. He was on Smallville. He played Lex Luthor's father. Gremlins 2, he played, was it Clamp? Donald Clamp. He was supposed to be like Donald Trump. He's the guy that owned the building and everything. He was like the business guy. Let's see.
I recognize him from a 52 pickup because I'm a Roy Schneider stan or whatever. It's a Roy Schneider movie from like the early 80s.
Yeah, I've never seen that one. I think me and Joe, Professor Joe, discussed that one because he liked it too. So I'm going to have to check it out.
Yeah, pretty cool. He plays like a CPA extortionist murderer, kind of the main-ish bad guy. There's a couple of bad guys, but he's one of the main bad guys in the movie.
All right, 52 pickup. I got to watch it. Out of nowhere, playing Jackson Harglow from Planet of the Apes and so many cool things. Wayne's World 2, if you remember. It's Charlton Heston. And Charlton Heston would probably roll in his grave if he knew that I credited him with Wayne's World 2 over all the other stuff he's done, but that's just it. Now, I want to ask you, Eric, because I didn't know this until I read it. Did you know, well, there's two. Did you know who the paper boy that John Trent comes across at the end of the movie is in real life?
Yeah, Star Wars, what's episode 1 or 2, 3? What's his? I'm not a Star Wars guy. What's his name?
2 and 3. Hayden Christensen.
Oh, Hayden Christensen. Yeah, that's right.
Anakin Skywalker.
Now he was only the one in the real world, right? Aren't there like 10 paper boys or whatever? It seems like it.
At the very end, when he wakes up on the road,
right,
and he asks the paper boy where the highway is. I'm an adult. If someone said to me, "Where's the highway?" I wouldn't be able to point it out to them. But like this paper boy who rides around on bicycles, like it's up over there. I'm like, why does this 10-year-old kid know where the highway is? But I don't know. That's just me. This is another one. I mean, I've seen this movie. Well, I've seen it 3 times now. I saw it in 95. So like wipe that out. I saw it like in the pandemic. I watched it on Shudder, I think. So like 2 years ago. It didn't hit me until this viewing who this next guy was. His name is Wilhelm von Hamburg, and he plays Simon. And as I'm watching this movie, sitting next to Lloyd and Laura, I leaned over to Laura and said, "Holy shit, is that Vigo the Carpathian?"
Yeah.
Did you recognize him right away? It took me
like
a while.
immediately. And I haven't seen Ghostbusters 2 that often, but I just remember the painting, like the evil painting or whatever. I mean, immediately. What I didn't realize until I did like a little research or whatever was that he was in Die Hard.
Yeah, he was one of the. I didn't realize that either. I think he was one of the.
He was one of the 2 guys doing the missile launcher, and he gets cooked when McClane throws the C4 down the elevator shaft. So he kind of gets blown up because I was like, I don't remember like a one-on-one battle or whatever, but yeah, he was in the elevator with the elevator goes down when they're walking in the building or whatever. So you see him. But
okay,
cool.
Another thing about him, very interesting, was in the 60s and 70s, he was a professional boxer. Which might explain that face a little bit. 30 wins, 11 losses, and 6 draws, and apparently he retired in 1970. And then they said for like 10 years before he became an actor, he just lived like a hard life. Like he was a Hell's Angel and all these other things. And then eventually he just kind of worked into acting somehow.
Yeah, he spent like 5 years in prison in the 80s. He's just a hard liver, drinker, prostitutes, the whole deal. So yeah. Yeah,
the thing I read said he got involved in prostitution, and then it made it a point to say with men and women. So I think they're saying, as the Australians would say, he was a little AC/DC.
Sure.
Which is all right by me.
Sure.
This this movie, the plot of this movie essentially is heavily borrowed from H.P. Lovecraft, right? Like, there's a very big kind of dip into H.P. Lovecraft and Stephen King. It's kind of a combination. Would you agree?
I get, obviously Lovecraft. I get King, Sutter Kane, Stephen King. I get David Lynchian kind of, some of the scenes, especially where, like Lost Highway and, kind of the weirdness there. So I get a little David Lynch too out of it. But yeah, definitely Lovecraft.
Yeah. So Sutter Kane is a novelist, and we'll get into the story in a second, but Sutter Kane is like the central figure in terms of the background of what's going on in this movie. Here are some of the H.P. Lovecraft actual book titles, and then the book titles of the Sutter Kane books in the film. So in H.P. Lovecraft, there's the Dunwich Horror. In Sutter Kane's universe, it's the Hobbs End Horror. H.P. Lovecraft is, The Whisperer in Darkness, and in Sutter Kane's book, or in the Sutter Kane universe, the book is called The Whisperer of the Dark. And then one more I've got, there's more than just these three, but I've got three. The Thing on the Doorstep is an actual H.P. Lovecraft story, and The Thing in the Basement is a Sutter Kane story. So Sutter Kane is the essential, the binding of what's happening in this movie.
I guess I just throw in that At the Mountains of Madness, I guess, is a Lovecraft story.
It is. It absolutely is. Guillermo del Toro tried to make that movie for years, and it just never came together. So yeah, At the Mountains of Madness, in the Mouth of Madness.
And what's cool is the production design. They designed the books, or the front and the back covers for each of the books that you kind of see throughout the movie, whether he's reading it, Trenton's reading it, or when he goes to the publishing house, you see the books. And if you go online, you can actually like find the scans of the book covers, and it just, the scenes in the movie where these Lovecraftian things are happening, especially when they get to the town, the covers of the books reflect that. So kids chasing the dog, I guess you'll get into that, and all these different scenes are kind of on the covers of each of these books. And there's a synopsis on the back of each cover that kind of describes what the story in the books are. And you can actually get these books. Like if you go to Etsy, you could, someone's recreated like these books. If you want a set of if you want a set of all six, it's like $138 or something. So, but it's just a cool like detail, that these books are kind of at least the covers are kind of out there. So
did you buy these, Eric?
I bought you, man. I bought you one, man.
All right. Thank you.
Gotcha.
Thank you. As long as it's The Thing in the Basement, that's my favorite. So the movie starts off with John Trent being brought to a padded cell. He is just he's in a straitjacket and kind of raving, being dragged by his feet. He kicks one of the guards straight in the balls. That's a pretty funny part.
Apologizes later, though.
He does apologize. He does apologize. He gets thrown in a padded room. Saperstein, played by John Glover, seems to be the guy in charge of this facility. David Warner's character, Dr. Wren, comes because he wants, this is like one of those stories that starts at the end-ish, right? Not the total end. We get to a total end, but it starts, and then we get the main character telling a story, and that's kind of the framework of it. Do you like when movies do that?
I like it, I guess. You lose the part. This, it doesn't really come into play here, but in some movies you wonder, well, is the main character going to get through X? But he does because he's telling the story. But this movie kind of does it too, where there's some scenes in the flashback that he wasn't there for, but yet it's his flashback.
Right.
Especially with the Julie Carmen character, she kind of goes off on her own and does some things, and you follow her, but he's telling the story. So it's just a little like nitpick or whatever. You don't follow the rules of, you should really spend every scene with him, and you don't because it's a flashback.
Honestly, I never even thought of that. You're absolutely right. It's like in Jaws 4 when Ellen Brody has the flashbacks to shit that happens in Jaws that she wasn't there for. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Wren gets there and says, has he said anything? No, he hasn't said anything. He just asked for a black crayon. He walks into the padded room, and one black crayon, by the way.
Yeah.
He has not only covered all the walls in this room, but he's basically crayoned all these crosses all over himself. Now, here's another question for you, Eric. You can't draw on yourself with a fucking crayon.
I tried it. I tried it for this fight. I to go the extra mile for the pint. And no, the crayons don't work that way, it turns out.
No. I think you'd have to really either heat it up or rub it to the point where your skin breaks for anything to come off. But he's managed to do it, and he starts telling the story about what has happened. So essentially he has been hired because he's such an ace, as we talked about. Really weird that Bernie Casey is in this movie, but only in like a very small role very quickly early on. I thought that was odd.
Do you know what David Warner, he's a doctor, but do you know where he's from?
Nope.
And they don't really get into it. I guess Saperstein kind of says something like, oh, they kind of made it like he was part of a group or something that, I don't know, would interview. I don't know. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, because they also kind of make it clear that when we're at the mental hospital, it seems like the world is falling apart, right? Like things are happening. Yeah, they reference that like things are happening outside, which turns out to be some kind of apocalypse. But I thought the same thing. Who sent David Warner there? Why is David Warner there? You know, he wasn't sent by the publishing company, right?
No.
So yeah, that's another oddity there. He gets hired by a publishing company to find Sutter Kane. Charlton Heston is I guess either the president or the owner. Maybe he's Cy Sperling. Maybe he's both. Maybe he's also their best client. I don't know. But he basically says Sutter Kane is our golden goose. He is the world's like greatest horror writer. Now, obviously, as we said, there are a lot of allusions that this is like Sutter Kane is supposed to be a Stephen King, you know, like a stand-in for Stephen King in this story, especially even with the S and the C, the hard C.
Sure.
But did you find it weird when then they actually referenced Stephen King?
Yeah, it was almost like, it was a little weird. It was like, I don't know what, it was weird because I just figured that was kind of like, you know, that was him in this world or in this universe or whatever, that he's a quote unquote Stephen King. But then they say, no, he outsells Stephen King. So kind of a little dig on Steve. But yeah, I did think it was weird. Let me ask you so if he's an insurance like claim investigator, what's the insurance claim investigation for his, you know, the missing author? Like what?
Well, I think it's that Sutter Kane owes them the manuscript.
Okay.
And he's disappeared and the manuscript has disappeared too.
Right.
So they're going to find where he is and get their book because like I think Charlton Heston says like it's due out like next month or something.
Right.
You know? And obviously this is before like George R.R. Martin where you could just disappear for like 15 years and nobody seems to fucking worry about it. So yeah, I think maybe they think that, and I don't know if they said this, but maybe he took an advance on it and now they can't find him and they're like,
right.
Well,
I was just trying to figure out the insurance part of it, you know, like what's insured in this scenario that he's missing and when, you know, how does a claim investigator come into it? I mean, I don't, you know, I just like Sam Neill looking for stuff is cool. Like, so I'm down with it anyway, but just curious.
So Sam Neill he has a weird experience. He goes out to a diner with Bernie Casey and this fucking absolutely crazy dude with an axe, like slowly walks across the New York, aka Toronto street and smashes in the window of the restaurant. And he says to him, do you read Sutter Kane? This is kind of repeated throughout the thing. He also has, like fucking 4 pupils or something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. He was wearing contacts that I heard in a John Carpenter commentary that he kind of scratched his cornea a little bit wearing these contacts. But they're kind of blue, like kind of like almost like 2 cells dividing-ish looking kind of thing. The line, do you read Sutter Kane? I was like, is this guy saying it? Because it sounds like a voiceover. It does not sound like him. So that guy's name is Conrad Bergschneider. And I found a Nancy Drew episode from 95 and I wanted to hear his voice. I couldn't find like an interview with this guy or anything, but it definitely wasn't his voice. But I couldn't find out who did that voice. I couldn't find a name. David Warner, who does some voiceover, might be him. But I was just interested because it's such a distinct, like it sticks in your head, that voice and that quote. So
it did sound like ADR for sure.
Yeah.
I also read, and I read it after we saw it, the other night, that I guess every close up in the movie, everybody's eyes are blue.
Yeah.
Okay. You noticed that?
I didn't notice it, But I took their word for it after I read it. I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely the blue scenes in the movie or whatever. But I didn't think that Julie Carmen's eyes were blue. I thought she had dark black eyes.
I think she did too, but I think they're saying in every close-up shot of a character, the eyes turn blue.
Gotcha.
And then there's obviously a scene at the end, and we'll kind of get there, where Sutter Kane says to John, did you know that my favorite color was blue, right? So, yeah. and this whole thing, like, let's just get into it. Like, the overall idea is that, the idea of this movie is he writing a reality? Is this In the Mouth of Madness book that he's writing? Is this becoming our reality? So John Trent is sent to go find Sutter Kane. Jackson Harglow sends him with Styles, as he repeatedly says throughout the movie. They're about to leave together, but in the kind of build up to them leaving, John Trent decides to start reading these books. And as soon as he starts reading these books, Eric, what kind of starts happening to him?
He starts kind of, they show him in different scenarios, like he's walking in a street and he sees a poster for the book, and he's in an alleyway and he's dreaming these things of, in the alley, there's a police officer beating on somebody who's trying to do graffiti on the wall, and then he'll wake up, and then he'll wake up again. So he's losing his grip a little bit as he's reading through the books, I'd say. Two
things I noticed about John Trent, the character. Number one, he never wears relaxation clothes. When he's home reading these books in his apartment, he's in a button-up shirt tucked in, got the nice loafers on and everything, right? He looks way too dressed up.
No jammies for Trent.
Throw some jammy pants on, dude. Get a nice flat flannel pair from I don't know, Old Navy or whatever. The second thing is that he's got to make a good amount of money, right? He's essentially a contractor, and he has this specialty. Why does he live in that area? It seems like the area he's walking through to get to his house should not be where he lives. It looks really rough.
Right. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I never thought that the alleyway was nearest. I didn't know where it was, because you kind of just see it, it's repeated throughout the movie. So I didn't know if it was near his house or his apartment, rather. I don't know.
Yeah, I felt like he was walking home every time he would have that little moment with the cop. Did you jump at all in this film? Were there any jump scares for you that you think of?
Yeah, they do the double dream wake up thing 10 times.
Yeah.
So I kind of got used to it. But the one with the cop sitting next to him got me in the theater.
Yeah, I got Laura too. Laura Buck Highland. The fog and In the Mouth of I don't know if Laura had a rough day, but everything that happened in both of those movies made her jump. It was
10 cups of coffee.
PCP, meth. I don't know what Laura was on that
something
day.
Going on. Yeah.
So they head up to, now he figures out, I also don't know how he figured this out. What do you know, a discernible way that he figured out how to make the map out of the book covers?
Yeah, there was a red line on every cover. And if you put all those books together in a certain order, you could trace the line. That's what he was tearing. I didn't realize it when I was watching the movies. How does he know how to tear this shape or whatever? I didn't notice their thin red line on all the books.
Okay, I didn't know that, because I figured maybe it was just he was having, something was helping him. You know what I mean?
Right. So it's a little weird, because as popular as this Kane is, you figure that somebody would have figured out the line thing. Essentially, he's the first guy to ever figure this out.
If it was internet time, someone would have figured it out.
Right. If it was
quicker.
Reddit, it would have been, in 4 minutes, it would have had it. But, and it's essential that he does it, because without it, there's nowhere to go. So it's he has to figure it out.
Right.
Otherwise, where's he going to go? Where's he going to look for so everything kind of relied on that plot device, I guess. It shows how smart he is, I guess, or whatever, and he's on the ball or whatever. And yeah. It's funny. I'm so bad at geography. I would have driven to Idaho or something. I said, oh yeah, Idaho.
Yeah. Well,
direction.
He puts it together. The map he makes out of this book, these book covers, and essentially it is New England. It's something we're very familiar with in southern New England. But it looks like the town of Hobbs End, which is where he determines that that Sutter Kane is hiding, is in southern New Hampshire. So they decide to go to southern New Hampshire. Now, what I like about this movie is it doesn't ease you into weird shit happening. The second they're on the road, weird shit starts to happen. Give us a couple ideas, Eric, of what starts to happen when they're on their road trip.
Styles is sleeping. So it's just funny. It just shows his character. Like I don't know if he's bored. He wants to wake her up, and somehow he has like a horn in his glove compartment, like a clown horn. Or it wasn't even like an air horn or whatever. It's like wonka wonka. And so I don't know. They have a little bit of whatever back and forth. I guess does the weird stuff start happening when she starts driving though?
When she's driving is when like the line starts disappearing in the road, and she sees the bicyclist like passing them and coming back towards them, and it looks like an I don't know what do you call that, an albino of some sort. Yeah, and then at one point it appears that they're in the clouds, right? Like she's flying the old Ford Taurus.
Yeah. So the cyclist starts out as a young boy, and they have the cards and the spokes. So you always hear it first, like pop, 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 because they have the cards and the spokes. And then, a couple of minutes later, it comes back, except now it's an old man, but still with a boy's voice, because he's saying like, I can't get out, or he won't let me out, I guess, or something like that. So you get a sense as like somebody like caught in a loop or whatever. And then, not women drivers or whatever, but she hits him. And he goes flying over the car. And I guess and Carpenter said during his commentary that they actually sped up that to make the impact seem more dramatic. There's like the frames were a little sped up for that impact, and that was a real stuntman that really got hit. That was kind of how they did that. They just
really?
Yeah, they just did them. And but yeah, so and then you're right. Then when they have to they get that spooky way into Hobbs End, they're flying, and I guess ILM did that effect of looking out the door and seeing like she's in the clouds, and then they end up in the covered bridge or whatever that leads them to Hobbs End.
Yeah, they end up in Hobbs End finally. He sleeps the whole fucking time. He's worse than me on road trips. I've done some road trips with friends where if I'm not on my point driving, I'm out. I'm just fuck it. Wake me up when we get there. And that's him. He wakes up and he hasn't dealt with all the shit she's dealt with. And he's like, oh, Styles, we made it. So they go into this little like idyllic town that is essentially like Main Street, USA. Nobody's around though. Nobody at all is around. The only thing that they see, but only one of them sees it, Styles, he doesn't see it, is this giant gaggle of fucking children chasing this poor fucking dog like through the town. He doesn't see it. They eventually find this hotel. What Styles hasn't told him yet at this point, and she does tell him, is that she's already read most of the manuscript of In the Mouth of Madness, and she realizes that in her head that this is a hotel that he wrote about, because everything in the town seems to be something that he has written about in the book. Or is it that he's created it through his writing? Dun, dun, dun. Right. They get to the hotel, they go, and it's, I don't remember. I didn't write her down in the cast. Picture that little old lady from every movie in the 80s and 90s. I'm trying to think of anything in particular I can remember her from, but she's the innkeeper here. And
it's Frances Bay, and she was in the Adam Sandler golf movie. Was it
Oh, she's the grandmother that fucking Ben Stiller is going to jack up.
Yeah, and exactly. And she was also, she had the marble rye in that Seinfeld episode where Seinfeld steals the rye.
Yeah.
Give me the rye, you old bag. He runs off with the rye. And she was also, and I didn't know this until I looked it up, she was Fonzie's grandma in Happy Days. So she was in a couple episodes of Happy Days. She didn't start acting in movies until she was like in her late 50s.
Yeah,
she was her first movie. Yeah, her first movie was like Foul Play with Chevy Chase.
Yeah,
and that was I don't know what she did before that, but she did like radio plays, back when gather around the radio or whatever.
Yeah, I remember that, Eric. Yeah, I remember that greatly.
Yeah, she's awesome though. She's awesome.
Yeah, so I guess you are pretty old if one of your earliest roles is Fonzie's grandmother in 1981. What's his name? Fonzarelli. What's the actor's name? Henry Winkler is 85 now. So yeah, you got to be pretty old. So she's this nice old lady. They get a room and they decide they're going to start looking around. And things kind of are a little weird in the hotel. One of them, there's a painting of like a young couple by a lake that keeps on kind of changing when everybody looks at it. And then I think, John Trent says, he looks out a window and says, well, if this was, the town from the book, there'd be a giant black obelisk church out this window. And she goes, yeah, no, but you didn't pay attention when you read the manuscript because it's out this window. Bum, bum, bum. They look out the window. would that church fit in any idyllic town? It looked like Darth Vader's fucking castle.
I didn't think it was real. Like, I thought it was a matte painting, especially like when they're walking up to it, when they leave the hotel and they're walking up to the church. Like, I thought it was a matte. Like, I didn't realize it was an actual church, like in the middle of it's in the middle of like nowhere. Like, there's nothing surrounding. I guess now they've done some build up and there's like, you can see apartments or whatever. When they filmed it, it's just a church in the middle of like a field and like nothing around it. It's crazy.
Yeah. They decide to go there, Eric. What happens when they get there to the church?
They get there and, they're kind of looking over the church and the kind of the decorations or whatever, the mosaic like above the door. And that's when a stream of cars start screaming towards the church.
And who comes out of those cars?
What's his name? Vlad the Impaler. What's his name from
Vigo. Vigo the Carpathian.
Vigo. And they got shotguns and he's calling out for, I guess his son, calling out for Johnny. And the doors of the church kind of open and close, and there's a little boy inside the church, and that happens a few times. And then the doors open, and there's the guest of honor. It's Sutter Kane is standing at the door, right? Sutter
Kane comes out, and I think also the Hounds of Hell.
Yeah,
right?
He releases the Dobermans, right?
He releases the Dobermans on them, and I love how the what's his name, Simon character Vigo, when he gets out of the truck, he just lifts up his shotgun like Bruce Campbell above his head, and he launches off a couple rounds, and he's Johnny, screaming for Johnny, and I didn't get the whole idea. Did you understand what was happening with the kid? What they never said like Sutter Kane's like stealing the kids or anything. So why was the kid there?
I don't know. I mean, like all of these kind of weird incidents, I just assume were part of stories, like whether it was the kids with the dog, I didn't understand that at first. And I just assumed it was in a story that Kane had written somehow.
Yeah. So they end up leaving at that point, getting away because Styles is like, look, we got to get out of here. This is dangerous. They go back to the hotel. I think at this point, Trent is kind of like, I want to get some answers. So he goes and he starts talking to the Frances Bay character, the old lady. And she's acting a little odd, right?
She's kicking something.
She's got something underneath the reception desk and she's kicking it. Now, John Trent doesn't see it, but we do. And it's a naked old guy, right? It's like her husband, but like, it's literally like a 70-year-old actor with, you don't see a lot, but like you see like bare ass and he's kind of laying down there. And so now we're getting an idea that like more and more sinister things are happening here. Let's just kind of get into the Frances Bay bit because I love this scene in the movie. First of all, Trent starts to investigate. Trent believes what is happening here, Eric. What is he convinced is going on in this town?
He thinks that it's all like it was a setup. It's like a promotion set up by the publishing company to get a town and to, I guess, I don't know whether it's supposed to be a tourist attraction or just try to convince him that things are happening. And then he goes back and he reports it. But somehow, he thinks it's all set up, but he thinks everything's a setup, which for him, it seems like it is, that's what he does. He figures out fraud. So he assumes that this is all like a setup for promotion for the new book, I guess.
So he wants to get some answers and he decides to go into the basement of this hotel that nobody else is at. And honestly, I'm not going in this fucking basement. He gets down to the basement to kind of start asking some questions of the old lady, and he finds her. But what exactly does he find, Eric? Because it's fucked up.
She's transformed into some kind of like tentacle kind of in the dark, and she's chopping away at her husband, I think, down in the basement kind of deal. And I guess they use miniatures for that. I read that they originally had a full costume for an actor or something, or maybe even for her, but it didn't look good. So they used miniature there. It looks pretty cool. Pretty cool effect.
It is cool. One of the things I like about this movie, I've never read H.P. Lovecraft, but I understand the ideal of H.P. Lovecraft is like the thing you see out of the corner of your eye, like that kind of thing. And there's a lot of that in this movie. And I like that. Like, the quick glimpses, you don't really see a ton of her, whether or not it was for, kind of like Alien Jaws effect. Like maybe it didn't look that great. So we just do quick shots. But there's also the one bit where when they go into the hotel, there's like some kind of like glass house. And they say, oh, in the book, that's where like the horror or something lives. And at one point they look that way and you see this like tentacled thing like in there. Do you like that kind of horror? Do you just want the stuff like right in your fucking face? Or do you like the, oh shit, what was that?
I'm a pretty, oh shit, well, that kind of guy. I will say though, and I think this is a movie you haven't seen yet either, is A Color Out of Space.
I famously not Larry keeps bothering me
yeah.
about that. Yeah.
I mean, I think that movie's just awesome. And they show you like everything. You don't get that. I realize this is like 93 or whatever in effects. And you know, everything is kind of shaded in darkness, which is cool, you know, but Color Out of Space, I mean, you see everything and it is awesome looking. I mean, they did a great job with, you know, just some fucked up kind of visuals and, tentacles and, you know, craziness. So, but I like the kind of hidden stuff, the flash in the corner, that stuff too.
You know what? Larry's been trying to get me to watch Color Out of Space for like a year and a half now. And just because you liked it, I'm going to watch it this week just to fuck with Larry.
It's really good, man. It's really good. It's one of my, I don't know, in the last 10 years, like one of my favorite movies. It's really good.
All right. I'm going to check it out. So things are kind of getting really weird here, and things are getting even weirder because it seems like now Styles has kind of fallen under, like, she's in some kind of spell. She seems really horny for Trent, but at the same time, she's acting really bizarrely. At one point, not to jump ahead a little bit, she fucking bends herself backwards and her head turns around and she's walking on all fours, right? Like,
well, yeah, that's later on as he's trying to escape the town with her.
Right.
I mean, you know, she does like 10 like tentacly weird things prior to that, and he's still dragging her along with trying to get her out of there. But that was it. The upside down contortionist thing, whatever. That was when he finally like leaves her.
What point, like, do you think that he finally realized that this wasn't these people weren't crisis actors, or that this was fake? Do you think it was when he gets stuck in look, I'll tell you, one scene that I remember from this movie, from the time I saw it in 95 in the theaters to the time I watched it again like 2 years ago, is the car going around in circles multiple times.
Right.
Do you think that's where he finally like gets the idea that, oh shit, this is like totally real?
Yeah, I'm sure. And then even after that, when he's talking to Vigo later on, he's saying that he's an actor, like he's calling Vigo an actor. Where's the speakers? You know, but at that point you can tell he's trying to convince himself that it's all, you know, that it's fake. But he's trying to convince himself. I'm sure at that point he realizes that it's unexplainable what's happening.
So we eventually meet Sutter Kane, and it seems to me, not being, just from the dialogue, that he is in this place and that he has been in contact with an ancient evil. And the ancient evil is using him as some kind of conduit to restructure reality. Is that what you got out of it?
Yeah, it's like plagiarizing the ancient evil, or I don't know, they're telling him what to write kind of deal. And he said at first, I think he thought he was writing this stuff, and then he realized that he was just writing what they told him to write or something like that. And the idea is that as you read these writings, you're prepping for the end of the world, because as you read this stuff, you change, you turn into tentacle whatevers, and you go crazy and you get super, super violent. Yeah, I mean, his prior works, those earlier books, it would happen, they talked about people reading it and feeling out of sorts or whatever, and some violence. But this is like the coup de grace, right? This book right here is leading, all the books lead up to this book, which will eventually bring about the end of the world. The more people read it, the more it spreads, and eventually the world will end.
It is a literary pandemic. And that's what he wants, right? That's what he's trying to do. He kind of talks about keeping the evil at bay, but he can only do it for so long. And we get some more cool visuals of like doors, like kind of expanding and contracting, and
sweaty rubber doors, like kind of visions in my head of like, again, Lovecraft, like Cthulhu and stuff that's like back there. We see some tentacles again. So as I mentioned, he just decides to leave. He decides this is enough. And every time he tries to get out of town, he's stuck in some kind of like weird time loop. He ends up back and back and back and back again until finally, and I'm going to ask you, cause I'm kind of, what happens? He does get out of it. That's the point where Sutter Kane rips himself open like a book, right? And he gets out of that tunnel. Is that what happens? Yeah. So he's always driving, and the loop is when he's trying to drive to get out, and he ends up back at a mob at like the center of town on Main Street or whatever. He gets into a car accident, like trying to drive through the mob, and he sees Styles and he swerves out of the way. And then he kind of knocks himself out, and he wakes up back in the church. So he's back in the church with Sutter Kane. And Sutter Kane like reveals the evil plan or whatever. Yeah, at that point, Styles is there as well. and he's handed the manuscript by Sutter Kane. He like types the last page and rips it out of the typewriter or whatever.
Puts it in a little tray.
Yeah, nice little tray, whatever. Nice, everything's nice, stable. Hands him it, and then he basically says, your job is to deliver this for me, and then Sutter kind of tears himself open, like he becomes pages in a book almost. That's a cool effect, and he kind of tears himself open, which kind of creates a hole or a portal maybe, where these old ones or these evil things are going to come out. And those things essentially chase Trent down this like long tunnel. So these kind of monsters come. So he grabs a manuscript and he's running, and the monsters chase him down the tunnel, jump all over him, and that's when he wakes up on the road. And Hayden's there, telling him where the highway is.
Darth Vader tells him where the highway is.
Yeah.
Did the scene where he's being chased down that tunnel by like the evil things remind you of the scene in Hellraiser when Christie's being chased by that giant Cenobite? That's all I could think about. I was like, holy shit, this is just like Hellraiser, with that giant Muppet Cenobite chasing her down the hallway. Yeah,
and same kind of effect too. It's like a forced perspective. You can kind of tell it's not really like 1,000-mile tunnel or whatever. And right. I guess I was reading the monsters that were chasing him were actually one giant blob of monster that was either on wheels or on a track that was being pushed by like 20 or 30 guys. So all those monsters chasing him were actually just one big giant stack of monsters, and that was kind of the effect. And again, they shaded in darkness or whatever. It's kind of hard to see, but like a cool effect.
I read that the initial effect was going to be, I think, Sutter Kane getting ripped apart by the elders, and I think John Carpenter is the one who said, make him tear himself open like a page of a book. So It was going to be, whatever it was going to be much more violent and much more of a big effect. I actually like the fact with the book thing where he kind of tears himself open like a page, and he's just like, it almost looks like a bullet hole through a book, kind of.
Yeah. I also read maybe another idea that they had was the whole town was going to get sucked into like a hole or a book, maybe the book or something like that. And again, too expensive. So they came up with that alternate, him tearing himself.
That's actually exactly what, it wasn't a monster killing him. Oh. It was the town was going to get sucked into it. Yeah.
Yeah, like a Buffy Hellmouth kind of deal.
So he ends up spending a night at first he gets on a bus with the person you want to be on the bus with least, right? Like this New York Yenta lady who's just talking his fucking ear off. But we do get the good moment where he has like that dream where Sutter Kane comes to him again. Cause was it before he get on the bus, or was it when he goes to the hotel that he burns the manuscript, but he wakes up and it's with him again? Or no, someone delivers it through a messenger service at the hotel, right?
Well, he leaves the book with Hayden in the middle of the road, goes to the hotel, and then the manuscript is delivered to him. And then he does burn the manuscript, and he doesn't have it anymore, but it turns out later it doesn't matter.
Right, when he gets to Harglow's office, okay. Yeah.
But what's cool about that is that they actually had two buses. They had a bus specifically painted blue. Everyone was wearing blue clothes and so it wasn't just like a filter. Like now it would be just digital, right? This was like physically everything was blue, and they had like blue lighting and such. But yeah, everything was actually really blue. They had two buses.
Yeah, because when he's on the bus and he's dreaming, he's talking to Sutter Kane. He forced himself into sleep to stop talking to this terrible lady. And he's talking to Sutter Kane, and they're talking about the reality of everything. And Sutter Kane says to him, did I ever tell you my favorite color was blue? And when he wakes up, everything in the bus is blue. Yeah. But very cool that you said that, because I just figured it was some kind of fucking filter.
Right.
Very cool. All right. Cool. So he ends up going back to New York and meeting up with Charlton Heston again. First things first, Charlton Heston tells him there was no Styles. I never sent you with anybody. I don't know who you're talking about. She doesn't work for me. And he's breaking up a little bit because of that. And then he tells him that, Trent tells Harglow that, I destroyed the manuscript. And Jackson Harglow is like, doesn't fucking matter. The book's been out for like 2 months. Matter of fact, they're so far along in this journey. What's coming out like next week, Eric?
Oh, the movie.
Yeah. Right? So yeah, we don't need the manuscript. You sent it to me like forever ago. So this is all blowing John Trent's mind. So Eric, take us into what is the final, I guess, delve into insanity for John Trent, and what sends him to the funny farm.
Yeah. So the next scene after the meeting at the office, I guess, is at a bookstore, and you see just people in line acting crazy and violent. And like a young guy comes out of the bookstore, and Trent approaches him. I forget what exactly he says Do you read Sutter Kane? I don't know exactly what he says, but Trent, has an axe and uses it.
Did you notice, here's something I thought was very funny, was my thought process was this guy was in the bookstore buying this book. When he comes out, did you notice he's halfway through the book? Like, was he in line that long? Like he read like it looks like a 600-page book, like a standard Stephen King story, maybe 1,000. When he comes out, he's halfway through. I'm like, did he read 500 pages in line? I didn't get that. But yeah, the kid's got the weird eyes too. Like he's affected.
An effect of reading these books is you get like blood, I guess, streaming down your eyes or on your cheeks from your eyes. And he had that as well. So.
And I think, am I correct? I could be, maybe I'm making this up, but do we also hear noises? Like, are things going on in the city? Like, almost like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe like you hear like people screaming and stuff in the background.
Yeah, commotion and like screams. And you could tell, this is widespread. Whatever's going on is widespread. Kind of like, you hear it.
So it loops back to the beginning of the movie where Dr. Wren basically is like, okay, and he's going to leave. I'm actually blanking on this. What happens when he ends up getting out? Like, I can't remember. Do the lights just shut off and the doors open?
Yeah. Well, the lights like get dim and then he hears like, commotion, screams from outside his cell, from outside the building at the window. I guess there's thunder and lightning as you get when there's the apocalypse. And just a lot of like screams and it sounds like just murder happening like outside of his cell. And the doors, it almost like ripped off the hinges, but the door is like bent and it allows him to basically leave the cell. And when he leaves the cell, everybody's gone. But the the hospital's been completely trashed. So, and there's like book pages like everywhere, right? Scattered all over the place.
Just scattering around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he ends up back in the city, and what does he see on a marquee?
He sees the poster for In the Mouth of Madness, and he's listed as the main actor, and Styles as the co-star, and a film by John Carpenter, and the same writer that wrote the real movie or whatever. But the actors were him and Styles, and I forget the third actor that was listed. But
I think it said Jackson Harglow, maybe.
Oh, Jackson. Yeah, okay. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So he's like, let me check this out. So he walks in the theater, gets some popcorn, sits down, proceeds to watch what happened to him on the screen, right?
Yeah. As he delves into madness. That's the last thing we see is him. I like that last scene because it's almost like he's sitting watching, and it's almost like this look of like just like, what am I looking at, to like sheer glee and like just like this Cheshire cat like grin of a guy that's like gripped in the mouth of madness, right? I mean,
yeah, and then he kind of starts to cry, like or there was like despair, like he went from kind of the laugh to like almost the side shot of him just kind of like in despair when it finally cuts away.
It reminded me very much of I won't spoil it for anybody, but a character in Midsommar. There's a scene in Midsommar that's very similar. A whole wave of emotions in about a 30-second span. So that's it. That's In the Mouth of Madness. Seanny Mac, we love you, man. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I was going to do this, or I know you're a big fan of the Monster Squad, so maybe we'll hold the Monster Squad till later. But I figured this was timely because Larry just showed it, and maybe some of our listeners just had a chance to see it.
One quick thing is when they're rolling the credits of the movie, none of the main actors are listed in the credits.
Oh, really?
It starts with like Francis Bay is the first actor listed. So like Sam Neill, Julie Carmen, they're not listed, which I guess is a nod to them being real or not using their actors' names. Their names are in the beginning of the movie, but at the end of the movie they're just not listed. It had to be intentional. So like,
totally. So, yeah.
It would have been cool maybe if it said like. John Trent as himself, they just all of them listed as themselves rather than the actor's name. That would have been kind of cool too, but still was cool they didn't list them. So it was a nice little touch there at the end.
That's a very cool final credit moment because the opening credits to this, they're not good. Like the opening credits basically just show like books being put together, like the printing process, but it's just like really generic, like guitar hard rock. Feels like it feels very 90s, but it doesn't feel like it fits. Like this movie should have had more of like maybe like a gothic theme or something, and it's kind of corny. It doesn't really 100% work for me. But
yeah, they tried to get Metallica because they wanted Enter Sandman, and they couldn't get the rights or couldn't afford it or whatever. So John ended up doing that song himself to sound like Enter Sandman. And Dave Davies from the Kinks actually plays guitar
I did read that Dave Davies was involved in the soundtrack somewhere. I didn't realize that was him.
Yeah.
And look, the Kinks, fantastic, great guitar player, but it just did. I mean, do you agree with me that it didn't feel like it fit the rest of this movie at all?
It totally didn't. And then, I guess they play the guitar at the end too. And you don't hear that anywhere else, but, I don't know. It was kind of cheesy. It was all right. I kind of liked it. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe it was like almost like the idea was like, we're starting this movie off like in the normal regular world, so, and as things get weirder, things change. But yeah,
there was one thing I was thinking. It doesn't fit the tone of the movie at all, because the movie is kind of fun in the end of the world kind of way. I don't know. John Trent says some funny things. I don't know. So it's kind of like a fun watch for me or whatever. But if John Trent played a guy who like had a family and wasn't a jerky a-hole-y kind of guy, and he found out that he wasn't real, like I thought that would be a kind of a, I don't know, like a twist or like a real horrifying thing, like to realize that you're not real and everything in your memory was written for you.
Right.
And he had things that he loved that turned out to be all not true. They couldn't really do it because, again, this movie is almost too fun for that, or too genre-y for that, or whatever. But
if he was a family man and had a wife and kids, and it would have been a gut punch at the end.
Right. But
it's less of a gut punch in the end and more of a, like, holy shit, like this happened. Like, this is what happened in this story. This is the world's ending as this movie ends.
Right.
All right, let's get into the box office. Let's see what was out around this time.
This country, you gotta make the money first.
All right, so like I said, this was February 3rd of 1995, weekend of February 3rd through February 5th. And Eric, I'm going to ask you if you've seen these movies in the theaters when they were out originally. So
sure. I'll
give you each one. All right. I wanted to point this out. This was a $8 million budget. It made $8.9 million. So it didn't do us so good. Number 5, it had been out for 8 weeks. It made $3.4 million that weekend. Dumb and Dumber.
I did not see it in the theaters.
Ooh, I saw it in the theaters. One of the funniest movies I've ever seen in the theaters. Me and my buddy went, and we just could not stop laughing at that fucking movie. Number 4, obviously opened that week, made $3.4 million in The Mouth of Madness. You saw it in the theaters, but only at Connecticut Cult Classics.
Yeah, 5 minutes ago, yeah.
By the way, Connecticut Cult Classics, I don't think tickets are on sale as of the recording of this, but June 17th, I believe. June 17th through the 19th, whatever Saturday falls in that weekend. It's time to go to the mall, Night of the Comet and Chopping Mall. So if you're a fan of those films or a fan of having a good time on a Saturday night, go to ConnecticutCultClassics.com. All right. This kills me. I've never seen this movie, period. It opened that weekend. It made $1 million more than John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. It's the Jerky Boys, Sizzle Chest. Did you see this one, Eric?
I haven't seen it, no.
Okay. All right. Can you imagine a world and a time when the Jerky Boys had a movie out? It's amazing. Opening that weekend as well, $4.8 million. Came in at number 2. Boys on the Side. It's a Drew Barrymore movie. I've never seen it.
No, didn't see that.
Didn't see that. And number 1 that week, 7 weeks in the theaters, $5.1 million. Anthony Hopkins and Brad Pitt with blonde hair down to his dick. It's Legends of the Fall. I saw that in the theaters. Did you see that in the theaters?
I have never seen it.
Saw it in the theaters.
I am. Oh, what is it? 1 for 5.
Technically, you're 0 for 5 because you only saw In the Mouth like this year.
Can you give me a half for that or something?
I'll give you half. Yeah. So yeah, Legends of the Fall. I saw it once in the theaters. I don't remember much about it. Yeah. So In the Mouth of Madness finished the year off at number 124 for the year, one below the Babysitter's Club movie, and weirdly enough, at 129 was Village of the Damned, as we mentioned earlier. Oh. So John Carpenter, both of his movies that year, did not do so great. Did not do so great. All right, let's rate this thing.
Have you gentlemen seen your midterm grades yet?
Oh, they're not posted yet, sir.
I've seen them.
Eric, I'm going to let you go first here on the Pint, as you know the rules, but maybe some of the listeners don't. 0 to 5, 0 being the worst thing ever, 5 being the best thing ever, quarter and half scale usable. What do you give either 1994's or 1995's In the Mouth of Madness?
I'll probably go with like a 3.0. It's a fun movie. If you don't think too hard about these things, what comes first, the written thing or the real thing, or kind of deal. But it's fun. The John Trent character, he's kind of funny, and it kept my attention the whole time. And it wasn't really scary, except for that one cop sitting in the on the couch.
Yeah,
kind of scary. So it wasn't scary or anything, but yeah, just a fun movie. I enjoyed it. It's good.
I think this happened to us once before on one of the films we've done together, but I echo you 100%. 3.0. It starts off interesting, like what happened. And then as we see what happened, psychological kind of stuff, is this real? Is this not real? The idea of a writer writing a reality or, what's going on here. Sam Elliott is always a strong lead. I mean, he's not like one of those guys that really has a lot of lead, acting credit in film. A lot of times he's a character actor and other things, but he's good in this. He's strong in this. And like you said, he plays a good kind of shithead. He's not a bad guy necessarily, but he's an insurance fraud investigator. He's kind of hard because of that.
Kind of sleazy. He's in a sleazy insurance world. He's sleazy, kind of hits on Styles, isn't a sleazy, he's kind of a little bit of a D-bag or whatever. But it works for the character,
Still can't write in yourself a crayon. I'm not going to take anything away for that, but it's bullshit. But yeah, it's a 3.0. If this is categorized as horror, I think this is probably categorized as maybe like a horror thriller or something along those lines. If you were to look it up, it's not scary. I mean, there are some cool little moments. As you said, there's a couple good jump scares. And then a couple little oh, that's really cool, kind of on the side. But there's no gut-wrenching terror.
Yeah, that one little girl's kind of creepy. Mommy's Day. That was a creepy little girl.
Yeah.
And, I could see though being a kid and seeing this and kind of just having it sit with you, like some of the visuals or whatever. Because I couldn't think of a lot of movies around that time that maybe had these kind of visuals. Just kind of the otherworldly kind of thing. So if I was a kid, maybe it would stick with me and scare me. At the time, kind of deal. But
So you think we're aged out of it?
Yeah, we're aged out. We're
yeah. That's fair. All right, so 3.0 both ways. Seanny Mac, I hope you'll talk to us still. That's a good rating. That's only 2 points below 5, and 5's the best thing ever. So it's definitely a solid 3.0. I would probably categorize this as the last good John Carpenter film, because as we said after this, Escape from L.A., that's garbage. For years, I tried to rewatch that and tell myself I like it, and it just doesn't work. Kurt Russell works as Snake Plissken, but that movie's not good. Vampires I saw once, and I remember it being okay, but nothing to ever go back to. And then, Ghost of Mars.
Oof.
I watched that years ago and didn't like it. And I watched it again in the pandemic there was one year I watched 250 movies, and I watched that. That movie fucking sucks. That movie is fucking terrible.
It's pretty bad.
It's not good at all. All right. So let's get out of here. But before we get out of here, I got two things I want to bring up real quick. Number one, live stream for The Cure is coming up on May 18th. So if you go to livestreamforthecure.com, you could do a million different things. You could follow all of their socials. You could subscribe to their YouTube channel. You could donate early. And if you don't know, Livestream for the Cure is a bunch of podcasters getting together, directed by a guy named Nicholas Haskins, who has a cool podcast called Nikolai's Kitchen, a cooking podcast. And for the last 6 years, they have all raised about $70,000. We have been really lucky to have been involved in number 5, number 6, and this year, number 7, we're on as well. We will be on, myself, Lloyd, and Stu from SWO Productions will be on May 18th at 7 p.m. So if you go, and that's the first night. So if you go to livestreamforthecure.com, you can see the schedule. And you know what? If you can, drop in, donate, say fuck cancer with us.
Grab some merch.
There's sweatshirts, there's mugs, there's all kinds of great stuff. So check that out. This year, I think they said they're pushing the goal to 25,000. And every year they've done this, they have hit their goal. And some of our friend podcasts, So Wizard, The Countdown, ODPH, 3FN, a lot of guys and a lot of girls, the Contrarians, are going to be involved. So if you like listening to those guys and girls, jump in, watch their segments if you can. I think this year it's Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday. I don't recall if there's a Sunday lineup at all. But 3 days, lots of chances to make some money, again, to say fuck cancer. And, we're going to be live. We're going to be playing Pick Your Poison, which we've done here a lot of times. I'm going to go through the box in a few minutes and try to find some really gnarly fucking questions. So drop it and donate. And if you can't drop it on ours and donate, go to the website and go to Livestream for the Cure /donate. If you donate in our honor, then just throw in for the pint, and that's awesome. We'll have a good time. The other thing I wanted to mention was, after you hear Colonel Troutman and John J. Rambo have their little exchange at the end of the episode, and then you hear our music going out, which is Entierro, a great local band. Stick around on this episode, because our buddy Sal from Robber Barons Inc., the incredible t-shirt company, he has a band called Buried Under Sky. Their song Darkest Corners is our theme song. So they did a EP last year, I believe it was, and I think 7 or 8 songs. It's really great. If you're into metal and kind of melodic stuff, it's very cool. They just put out a cover of the real life song Send Me an Angel. You know that song, Send Me an Angel, from the early 80s?
Right now?
Yeah, Send Me an Angel. Yeah. They just did a cover of that, but a little metally fashion. And I am going to put that at the end of the episode today. So check it out, bandcamp.com, look up Buried Under Sky. You can go to, if you have Amazon Music, all their stuff's on there. It's not hard to find local bands anymore, or, smaller bands, on all these platforms. So again, after you hear Entierro and that fades out, you're going to hear another song. Give it a listen, because it's really good. And I love those guys. So Eric, thank you so much for filling in for the Manster this week. It's always
awesome,
fun.
Man. Thanks for having me on.
I'm going to make you make a promise for me, though, so people could hear this. Promise me you're going to listen to all the episodes you've been on, because you said you have not listened to one yet in fear of hearing your own voice, and that's bullshit. I want you to listen to them.
Yeah, I was telling you before we started recording, that face that Trent makes at the end of the movie is the face I make when I try to listen to it. I'll try, man. I'll try.
All right. You're letting me down if you don't do it, and I don't like being let down. All right, Eric, say the words.
See ya.
It's over, Johnny. It's over! Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!